Ladies and gentlemen, hello over there. You're watching L24 Midnight News Edition coming to you live from Algiers. And to the headlines. After the Russian president called it a treason act, vowing to punish the responsible, Wagner chief pulled back his mercenary troops from marching toward Moscow, claiming avoidance of a civil war inside. As United Nations acknowledged that Palestinians deserve the right to protection, another 2 Palestinians lost their lives to Zionist fire in the occupied West Bank on Saturday. Taking up the question of Western Sahara, some speakers in Special Decolonization Committee called for urgent self-determination referendum and voiced concerns over human rights abuses practiced by Makhzen regime. As the annual pilgrimage returns to its monumental scale after 3 years of heavy restriction due to the pandemic, Muslims streamed into the holy site of Mecca on Friday, reaching almost 2 million, with more to be expected. Hello again and welcome. Starting from Europe, Russian leadership is moving to put an end to what it considers a military rebellion by Wagner Group forces in the Rostov region, amid calls to rally around President Vladimir Putin to enable the army to defeat what Moscow describes an internal traitor. Sofian Kantouri.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko announced that he was informed by the head of the Wagner armed group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who rebelled against the Russian military leadership, of his agreement to stop the movements of his fighters in Russia and to avoid any further escalation of the situation. For his part, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that an armed mutiny by the Wagner group force was treason and that anyone who had taken up arms against the Russian military would be punished. He also stressed that he would do everything to protect Russia and that decisive action would be taken to stabilize the situation in Rostov-on-Don.
We will protect both our people and our statehood from any threats, including internal betrayal. I repeat, any internal turmoil is a mortal threat to our statehood, to us as a nation. This is a blow to Russia, to our people. The actions we will take to protect our homeland from such a threat will be harsh.
Far from Rostov and its surroundings, the voices of Russian officials are rising to call on their citizens to rally behind the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The strength of our great multi-ethnic and multi-confessional country lies in the unity of its people and our historical intolerance of betrayal. President Vladimir Putin in his speech was very frank and clear, so that no one would have any doubts or questions. We have one commander-in-chief, not 2, not 3, just one commander. Everyone called for unity, and that's the main thing for us now.
For his part, the deputy head of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, also called for rallying around President Putin to defeat what he described as internal and external enemies seeking to destroy the country.
Now the most important thing to defeat the external and internal enemies seeking to tear our homeland apart is to rally around the Russian President, Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Division and betrayal paved the way to the greatest global tragedy and catastrophe. We will not allow this, and the enemy will be defeated. Victory will be ours.
Decisive hours that Russia is going through are recognized by its leadership, and despite the complexities of the sensitive situation, everyone insists on the need to unite to stop the rebellion before it expands.
Away from this military rebellion, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov reported heavy losses for Ukraine in Donetsk and Zaporizhia regions on Saturday. Konashenkov said in a video briefing that the enemy's total losses in these directions reached more than 170 soldiers, pointing out that the Russian forces repelled an attack by Ukrainian army on a village in Zaporizhia region.
In the southern direction of Donetsk, near the Vremivsky edge, The competent and fair actions of the Vostok group of forces, artillery fires, and heavy shooting systems succeeded in repulsing 3 enemy attacks in different regions.
To a different matter now, China urged on Friday both sides of Russia-Ukraine conflict to maintain calm and exercise restraint, strictly adhere to the bottom line of nuclear security, and make every effort to avoid irreversible situations. Speaking during an open meeting of the UN Security Council on the Ukrainian crisis, its deputy permanent representative to the United Nations said that Western countries should lift unilateral measures and the grain agreement should be implemented in balanced manner.
We call on all parties to work together to reduce the negative impact of the crisis and maintain stability of the global industrial and supply chains. We urge the countries concerned to immediately lift the so-called unilateral sanctions. The Black Sea Grain Initiative should be implemented in a balanced and effective manner. The memorandum signed by the UN and Russia should be seriously implemented.
Out of Europe to the African continent, Sudan particularly, where tension is worsening day after day as clashes between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army continue to spread fear and violence in the country.
The situation in Sudan continues to deteriorate, with clashes intensifying between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army, now entering the 3rd consecutive month. Military bases across Sudan have been targeted by strikes and anti-aircraft missile fire, exacerbating the dire humanitarian conditions faced by the civilian population. Heavy artillery, rocket launchers, missiles, drones, and various other weapons have been employed by both sides in their attacks on each other, primarily in Khartoum, Khartoum North, and Omdurman.
Both sides in the conflict need to sit together and negotiate a deal because the fighting and the war and the stalemate must end. Any war in the world should end through a solution, instead of always being like this.
As Sudan rapidly approaches the brink of chaos, the UN Security Council has been consistently urging the warring factions to cease hostilities and establish safe humanitarian corridors for civilians trapped in this war-torn nation who have been unable to flee the violence.
Safe corridors between Sudan and neighboring countries have to be established and borders must remain open.
Earlier, international donors responded to the United Nations call for increased aid amid the conflict, pledging nearly $1.5 billion in humanitarian assistance for Sudan and the broader region. However, the UN has revealed that a total of $3 billion is required this year for both internal humanitarian relief in Sudan and support for refugees fleeing the country. Unfortunately, only a fraction of this amount has been funded so far.
I'm pleased to say that today donors have announced close to $1.5 billion for the humanitarian response to Sudan and the region, led by Filippo for the region and myself inside Sudan.
This devastating conflict between Sudan's army and the Rapid Support Forces erupted in mid-April, fueled by tensions surrounding an internationally backed plan for a transition towards elections under a civilian government. The toll of this war has been staggering, with over 3,000 lives lost, turning the capital city of Khartoum into a war zone and triggering deadly violence not only in Darfur, but also in other parts of the country. The international community continues to monitor the situation closely, hoping for an end to the hostilities and the establishment of a peaceful and stable Sudan.
Chad requested huge aid from the international community, accusing it of leaving it almost alone in facing an unprecedented humanitarian crisis as it witnesses the influx of tens of thousands of refugees fleeing from war in Sudan. Chadian Prime Minister stressed that mobilization of international community does not reach the level of mobilization observed elsewhere, leaving Chad, according to him, almost alone in the face of receiving refugees while exhausting its own resources to the maximum extent.
The mobilization of the international community does not reach the level of mobilization observed in other places. leaving Chad almost alone receiving refugees, while exhausting its own resources to the maximum extent. Chad is seeking huge technical and financial support and assistance from countries and organizations.
To the Middle East now, 2 Palestinian youths were killed by the bullets of the occupation forces in Nablus, and the settlers continue to build a new settlement in separate areas of the West Bank, where they continue with attacks on the innocent Palestinians. Islam Seed.
Tragically, the sound of gunfire once again pierced the night in the occupied territories, claiming the lives of 2 more Palestinians. Tariq Musa Idris, a 39-year-old man, lost his life during an incursion by Zionist forces into Nablus. Meanwhile, Ishaq Hamdi al-Juni, a 17-year-old Palestinian, bled to death after a shooting attack took place at a major crossing from the West Bank into occupied East al-Quds. These incidents demonstrate that the Zionist forces appear to show no regard for the lives of Palestinians, not even sparing children. In a particularly distressing case, a 5-year-old child had his eye gravely injured when a rubber bullet fired by Zionist forces struck him while he was inside his father's vehicle. The cycle of violence perpetrated by Zionist forces against Palestinians and their properties continue to escalate with each passing day. Just this Saturday, state-backed Zionist settler militias protected by occupation forces stormed a village north of Ramallah. As a result, several houses, cars and agricultural crops were set ablaze. These provocations led to clashes between Palestinians, who resorted to hurling stones at Zionist soldiers and settlers.
We arrived in Safa. There were dozens of settlers. They fired at the village. The moment the settlers saw us filming, he shot in our direction. 2 bullets went into the camera. Then the camera blew up to the shooting. Thank God we are safe.
Regrettably, attacks and acts of terrorism committed by Zionist settlers against Palestinians have been on the rise across the occupied West Bank. These extremist groups seem to have received tacit approval from the Zionist government, despite repeated calls for the protection of Palestinians in the occupied territories.
The same line of thought, and during the general discussion of United Nations Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy, the permanent representative of Palestine to the United Nations, Riyad al-Mansour, stressed that the most dangerous form of terrorism is the continuous and systematic campaign against which an entire nation is subjected, noting that the occupation forces and settlers continue to kill Palestinians, terrorize children and steal lands, demolish homes and other crimes.
Settlers continue killing and maiming Palestinians as we speak. They are terrorizing children, stealing lands, destroying homes, burning villages, desecrating mosques and churches, all while chanting, quote unquote, death to Arabs with complete impunity. This state-sponsored terrorism. They deserve your solidarity and they are entitled to international protection.
Mr. Riyad al-Mansour also emphasized that the responsibility of the international community is to ensure that the Zionist entity must be held accountable for its continuous terrorist acts, pointing the double standards used to judge this terrorist entity.
Under this military colonial rule, there is no human security, no human dignity. The international community has a responsibility and an obligation to ensure that the occupying power, its officials, its military forces, and settler militias perpetrating acts of terror are held accountable. Palestinian children deserve better. The rule of international law deserves better. Double standards only undermine the credibility and authority of the list and of this multilateral order.
And a different topic now, during a sixth ordinary session meeting, Kodisa, or the Sahrawi human rights defender, launched a call to international community to protect Sahrawi civilians from the increased repression and serious human rights violations by the Moroccan occupying forces and guarantee their rights to self-determination. Salma Nasib.
In a significant development, the collective of Sahrawi human rights defenders in Western Sahara has issued a compelling call for the urgent action to establish an international mechanism aimed at safeguarding the lives of Sahrawi civilians in the occupied part of Western Sahara. During its sixth session, the committee aimed at focusing on strategies to support Sahrawi political prisoners and their family currently held in Moroccan prisons. However, disturbing reports revealed that Morocco continues to suppress peaceful demonstrations in the occupied Sahrawi towns, imposing severe restrictions on the Sahrawi Human Rights Organization.
The Sahrawi Human Rights Committee discussed ways and mechanisms to support Sahrawi political prisoners in Moroccan prisons and their families, and to participate in demonstrations calling for the right of Sahrawi people to self-determination and establish a UN mechanism to monitor human rights in Western Sahara.
During the meeting, the Committee of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders emphasized the dire human rights situation in the territories of Western Sahara. The association called upon the international community to shoulder its responsibilities and ensure the fundamental right of Sahrawi people to self-determination.
We call on the international community to assume its responsibilities in accordance with the international humanitarian law and United Nations resolutions to end the colonization of Western Sahara and guarantee the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination, as well as the right of Sahrawi refugees to return to their homeland.
It's deeply concerning that Moroccan authorities persistently target activists and journalists within the occupied Western Sahara territories. Many have been unjustly convicted in unfair trials, enduring harassment and inadequate access to medical assistance. In response to these inhuman violations, the Geneva Group in support of Western Sahara has urgently alerted the Human Rights Council and the High Commissioner, demanding the dispatch of a committee to investigate the violations by the Moroccan occupiers.
Algeria and China signed an agreement on Saturday to launch the partnership for the development of Gharj Bilat mine in Tindouf, southeastern Algeria. The contract concluded between the Algerian Mines Complex and the Chinese partner, represented by an alliance of 3 Chinese companies, includes the establishment of 2 Algerian-Chinese mixed companies, the first for the exploitation of Gharj Bilat mine in Tindouf, and the second one for the completion of a complex to convert the iron ore of the Gharj Bilat mine into semi-finished tiles in the state of Bashar.
Today, we came to Gharj Bilat mine with the officials of the Chinese complex presented by their head and their management. And this is to determine the extent of the progress of iron ore preparation works in the country, in order to supply the factory that will be established in the city of Bashar, to produce 500,000 tons of tiles, which need 1 million tons of extracted iron ore.
We came today to assess the site and the progress on the level of structures. With Feral, our partner, we work together to prepare the mining site, Gharj Bilat.
The fertilizer industry in Algeria is one of the most promising industries in order to increase exports and achieve food security by supporting the agricultural sector. Algeria began to gain back foreign investments in the field of fertilizer production, a bet embodied by Algeria in partnership between the Sonatrach Group and the Egyptian Orascom through Sorfert Company, which is famous in the local market. To a different matter now, around 40 people are missing after a refugee boat sank off the Italian island of Lampedusa. According to local sources, the vessel sailed from Tunisia was carrying 46 refugees from Cameroon, Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire. The survivors were taken to Lampedusa and others were brought back to Tunisia. And according to the representative of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to Italy, at least one newborn baby is among those missing. Mauritanian authorities announced on Saturday the arrest of a foreign ship in the country's territorial waters carrying a shipment of drugs including 1,218 kilograms of cocaine. Ahmed Mustafa, public prosecutor in the western state of Nouakchott, revealed that the interception and the arrest of the ship took place based on intelligence information and following monitoring and tracking operations that lasted 4 days, after which the National Navy managed on June 18 to detect, intercept and arrest a foreign ship suspected of carrying drugs on board. Now, in Europe, Kosovo Interior Minister said on Saturday that police found large quantities of weapons inside a car with Belgrade registration in the northern town of Zefikan. During a meeting with the media, Kosovo's minister blamed Serbia and its president Aleksandar Vučić for its effort to destabilize Kosovo through criminal groups.
Last night, a car with Belgrade license plate was identified about 100 meters from the municipality of Zvikan, in which large quantities of weapons, explosive devices and various ammunition were discovered. Shoulder rocket launchers, automatic weapons, a significant amount of ammunition, stun grenades, military uniforms and bags.
In U.S., a group of Republicans at House of Representatives failed a preliminary impeachment to open a possible investigation to isolate U.S. President Joe Biden, accusing him of abuse of power and disregard of his duties as President of the United States. According to 5 Best Things website, the vote was conducted on one-sided basis as 219 Republicans voted in favor, while 208 Democrats voted against the bill based on the U.S. Constitution states the Congress can try a president, remove him from office for high crimes and misbehaviors. Al-Hajj, or pilgrimage of the 2023, features a landmark full-capacity pilgrimage with 2 million pilgrims from 160 countries around the world that will converge on Islam's holiest mosque in Mecca this week to begin the lifetime spiritual journey at the holy sites in and around Al-Kaaba. Zahra Farjani.
In a momentous gathering, more than 2 million Muslim pilgrims from across the globe have flocked to the sacred city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia for the highly anticipated Hajj pilgrimage. After 3 years of stringent restrictions due to the COVID pandemic, this year's Hajj marks the largest congregation, signifying a powerful display of faith and unity.
ومن هنا أيضا في هذا الجانب.
And from here I announce, praise be to God, the completion of the stage of the arrival of pilgrims to the sacred house of God, who are coming from outside the kingdom, from all land, air and seaports, as planned. Their number from outside the kingdom reached 1.6,004,072.
As pilgrims arrived in the holy city, they embarked on one of the most significant rituals of the pilgrimage, known as the circumambulation or tawaf. This ritual involves walking in circles around the Kaaba, the sacred center of Masjid al-Haram, in a counterclockwise motion. The sight of the diverse crowd coming together in devotion is awe-inspiring.
I think this year crowd is too much, but the government and this management is trying to manage this very smoothly and hassle-freely.
Huge people here, crowd around 3 million, that I think. So it's very challenging with the weather, hot weather.
Over the weekend, pilgrims also had the opportunity to visit the cave of Hira, a location where the foundations of Islam were laid. It was in this cave that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received the first 5 verses of the Holy Quran, marking the beginning of the Islamic faith.
Visiting Gua Hira here is having our first experience, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to have this, the first ayah in Al-Quran. To be here is the great experience and the great thing that I can have.
I came to see the cave of Hira on a Nur mountain, where Prophet Muhammad used to worship.
Hajj is an immensely significant religious practice, and for Muslims, it is a lifelong dream to undertake this pilgrimage at least once in their lives. Serving as one of the 5 pillars of Islam, the Hajj is a time when Muslim brotherhood and solidarity are prominently displayed, and the deep sense of submission to Allah is fully realized.
May Allah accept the prayers and the Al-Hajj. Taqabbal Allah for this, and thank you so much for being with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself. Good night.